Hey guys, welcome back. On today's episode, we're going to be working on our categories. So we will display them and also add the ability to filter by any specific category. So let's get started. Before we do that, I would like to fix an issue we have at the moment, which is basically our thumbnail images are not showing. Now, the reason this is happening, guys, is we are actually not giving it the proper image route. So let me open up our post item. This is actually where we are displaying the thumbnail. We're basically doing post image, right? Now this works for these images because we generated these using Faker with our factory. And these are actually a URL. But our thumbnails that we upload with Filament are not. So we are not able to see them. We need to actually prepend /storage to them. So let me show you guys the image URL so you guys can see exactly what I mean. So right now we're getting posts, thumbnails, whatever it is, right? It should actually be storage / and if I do that, as you can see, it is showing it. What I would like to also do is not only be able to see the thumbnails we uploaded ourselves, but also be able to see these URLs which were generated with our factory, right? Now, if you only want to show the images uploaded by your, basically with Filament, you can just go ahead and maybe use something like asset, and then do storage / and you can go ahead and also add your image as well, okay? So you can do maybe something like this. This is like a quick and easy fix. And if I reload the page, now this works, but all our Faker generated images stopped working. So I would still like to use these images. So let's go ahead and fix that real quick. What I will do is I'm going to go open up our post model. And we can actually go ahead and maybe use an accessor. But for this case, I'm going to go ahead and define the method over here. I'm going to say public function get thumbnail image. And let's make sure there is no typo. So here what we can do is we can first make sure that the image actually is a URL or not. So I can go ahead and do basically a simple check of, let me show you guys what I mean. So str contains, this is a PHP function that checks if a string contains any specific words. So here the haystack is going to be our actual image. So I'm going to say this dot image. And then I'm going to check if it contains HTTP, basically if it's a URL or not. So this will work with HTTPS and HTTP. If it does, we can go ahead, is a URL. If it is a URL, I'll just do a quick inline check, okay? So if it's URL and say return, is a URL. If it is a URL, I will go ahead and just return the image itself. If it is not an URL, we can go ahead and get the storage helper facade and say URL, I believe, and then pass it in the image. Okay, just like this. Now we don't actually need to use this, but this is quite handy because it gives you the ability to also define a disk, right? So later on, if you define a custom disk for your post thumbnails, you can go ahead and add it here, and it will automatically update the URL across your entire application. So I like to use this every now and then. I'll even put public here, so later on we can go ahead and change it up, and I cannot type public. All right, and that's it, guys. So now that we have done this, I think we're good to go. So let's go ahead and replace this with the existing one we have, which is this one. So I'll come over here and I'll say post get thumbnail image, and I'll do a quick reload. And as you can see now, we're able to see both our the ones we have uploaded ourselves as well as the one generated with Faker. Now I don't know what the deal is with VS Code, guys. I probably need to update my plugins. It's not detecting this URL, but it is an actual valid method on the storage facade. So now that we have fixed that, let's go ahead and actually start working on our categories, okay? So first I'm going to implement the ability to actually filter the categories, and then later on we will actually display the buttons. So let's open up our post list component. So this is our post list Livewire component. I'm going to go ahead and add a new property for category. So we will be using this to filter our categories. I'm also going to go ahead and add it to the URL. So it'll be stored in the link as well. And then here we can actually go ahead and write some logic to filter by a specific category, right? So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to say where, and since we are filtering by a many-to-many relationship, we can't actually go where. We have to use something called where has. So where has gives you the ability to filter out or search based on a relationship, right? So inside this method, as the first argument, you need to pass in the relationship name. So if I open up our posts, we actually do have the relationship of categories, right? So I can go ahead and just pass in categories. And then as the second argument, it actually accepts a closure or an anonymous function, okay? You can also pass it in an arrow function. And inside here, this will go ahead and accept the query. And this is very similar to actually how scopes work, right? So if you guys remember scopes, it also accepted a query, and you were able to then perform any eloquent query you wanted, right? Run any eloquent function. Same thing is happening here. So we can go ahead and use this query to perform any search. However, this is actually being executed on the category table, not on our posts table. So what I can do here, I can go ahead and say where slug is equal to this dot category. All right, so this actually gives me the ability, or gives us the ability, to filter all the posts that have the slug of whatever we have. Okay, so this will actually give us already the ability to filter by any category we want. So I would need to go ahead and load this. Now, right now, we are not seeing anything. So the reason this is happening, guys, is because our category is empty, and it is trying to find the slug that it does not exist, right? So we would have to first check if the category is defined or not, or if it's not null. So in order to make this a bit easier, I don't want to actually put all the logic over here because it's going to get very messy. I'm going to go ahead, copy the code we already have, and actually move it to a scope. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to copy this, publish, let's name it with category. You can name it with whatever you guys like. I think with category should be okay. And then inside this with category, we can actually copy the code we already have, move it over here. Okay, so I'll also need to add the query. So it's going to be the exact same thing. We're basically checking any category with the slug category. Now we need to accept the second argument of category. Okay, over here. And then this dot category should become also category. So now we have the ability to perform and search our categories. Now it's giving us an issue. Let's see why that is happening. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, I forgot semicolon. And this also, seems like it's not finding it. Why is that? Yeah, so the reason this is happening, guys, is you need to define use and then category. So this category is actually passed down inside our anonymous function scope. And this should go ahead and fix our issue. Now, technically, we could go ahead and write an if statement here and say if category is, let's say null, or if it's empty, go ahead and skip this. I prefer to perform this logic outside and keep my scopes as small as possible. If you like, you can go ahead and do that here if you prefer. But in our case, I would like to actually do it inside here, because sometimes you may actually want to search for a category that's empty, okay? I don't know, maybe you need that. So here I'm going to go ahead and use this when. And when is an eloquent function that allows you to basically do a check, do a conditional search, right? So here I'm going to say if category where slug is equal to this dot category. So I'm just using this to ensure the category we're searching for exists. If it does not exist, this will return a null, and then this when it only performs a query if this is true or an actual statement, okay? And then we can pass it an anonymous function. Exact same thing as we did with scopes, guys. Same logic. So this is basically allows us to do a conditional check. If this category is null, it will not execute this function. If we do actually get a category, it will go ahead and execute this function, right? This is kind of like if we had an if statement, right? So this makes it so we don't have to write a bunch of if statements. And inside here, basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to say query dot with category. Okay, so we are referring to the scope we defined with category, and then I'm going to say this dot category. Now, because we are inside the class, guys, we don't need to use this use here for our class properties. Okay, so this should work just fine. And as always, I always forget to add the semicolon. So this should go ahead and fix the issue. If I reload now, we're actually able to see our posts. Now, if you want to search by a specific post in the URL, this might be very small for you guys. I do apologize. We can actually go ahead and say like category and then type whatever in. Okay, I'm going to say PHP. And now our search is actually working, but you're not able to see anything. So let's go ahead and fix that first before we do anything else. So first, I want to show the categories we have over here, as well as show all the possible categories on the right side. So let's start with the one on the right, and then we'll do the one under the post. So all the categories we have, I believe it is inside our posts index page. So let me close all these extra files. It is inside posts index. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually extract this category box inside this partial. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new file of categories. Let's say categories box.blade.php. And then I'll copy this code and move it over there. Okay. I'll also get rid of the ID. We don't need it, I believe. And then we can go ahead and actually include it. So let's go ahead and include it. It's going to be categories box. So let's do reload, still working. Now inside here, we actually need to go ahead and display all our categories. So let's open up our post controller, right? This is a controller that is actually loading this index page. And we actually don't need these posts anymore. So we can go ahead and get all the categories we need and pass them down to our blade file. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to say categories. We need to get the category model. Okay, and we can delete this as well as this. So we can get maybe the 10 most popular categories, something like this. Now, one thing I would like to do, guys, is I would like to only show the categories that actually have a blog post for them. So we might have some categories that are not used. I don't want to show them over here, okay? So in order to do that, we can use, again, the where has search that I showed you guys. So it's going to be something like this. We can go ahead and here say where has posts. And then inside here, again, it will accept a closure. I'm going to say a query. And then here, we can go ahead and say query published, right? So this will only give us categories that have a post first, and then those posts are actually published, okay? So this way, we don't show, some categories that don't have any posts with them. All right, now let's do a reload. We are getting an error, and this is telling us that post does not exist. It's because we don't have the relationship defined. So let's go ahead, open up our category model, and I'll just define the relationship right here. So I'm going to say public function posts, and I'm going to say return this dot belongs to many. So because we have a many to many relationship, we have to use belongs to many post class. Now, guys, I saw a comment on the previous episode regarding this. So by default, when you're defining many to many relationship, the convention in Laravel is to use the singular version of the model names. So here, for example, we have a relationship between post and category. So in the table name, you're supposed to use a singular version, right? So not posts, you need to use post, and then order them alphabetically, right? Because C comes before P in English, our table name should be category post. That's the Laravel convention. You don't have to follow it. So if you follow this convention that I use, Laravel will automatically detect your table name, right? However, if you're using something else, let's say post categories, right? Something like that. This actually sometimes makes more sense, post categories. But if you're using a table name like this, Laravel doesn't know what table you're using. So you need to pass it in as the second argument to this table. So here, for example, if you were using post categories, you have to say post categories. And I do understand sometimes these names make more sense than the Laravel convention. But, if it's a lot easier if you use the convention, you write list code and it's going to be consistent all along, right? So just something I want to mention in case you guys have any issues. So let me go ahead and delete these. All right, so now that we have this, let's do a reload, and it is working. Now we need to go ahead and display these tags or categories. So I'll open up our category box here above our A tag. We can go ahead and do a for each loop of categories as category. And we can wrap it around our A tag, okay? Let's do that. Let's save it. Let's see if it's working or not real quick. It is indeed working. Now, instead of this tailwind, we actually need to do category.title. So let's do a reload, and it is now working, guys. Now, we will have to fix the color in a second. I'll show you guys how to do that in a second, but the spacing is a bit off. So we can use a gap. This is the Tailwind CSS utility class of gap2. And it should go ahead and fix the issue for us. So these are not super kind of, squeezed together. So since we need to actually define different colors, what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to extract this into its own component. This is like a badge, right? So it's going to be a reusable badge. We can use it anywhere else. We are using it over here. We are probably also using it on the future post page. So we need to go ahead and actually make this be a reusable component. So let's go ahead and create a component for this. I'm going to open up the terminal, type in PHP artisan, make a component. I'm going to name it badge. You can name it whatever you guys like. And I'm going to do -- view. So only we have a view file. Hit enter. And while this is created, we can basically go ahead and replace this with the badge. Okay, so I'm going to copy this. I'm not sure what is happening, why this is taking so long. Did it actually create it? Let's see. Components, do we have a badge? It did not create it. Let's run it one more time. It is not working. Let's copy it. Not sure why this is happening. Okay, now it's working. So now we have this badge component. We can go ahead and copy this A tag, move it over to the badge, just like this. And obviously, instead of this category title, we actually need to do $slot. That's how you pass in data. Let's go ahead and do that. And then here we can actually get rid of all these and use X badge. And then here we can say X badge. All right, so whatever we put inside these opening and closing tags will go ahead and be replaced with slot. Let's format this. This looks very weird. Okay. All right, same thing for this one. Let's move this to a new line. And now if we reload, it is indeed working. So next thing we need to fix, guys, is the colors, because we are defining the colors from our admin panel, right? So here I already have actually done that for my PHP category. I set the text color to blue and the BG color to blue. Now there are a few ways you can implement this. One way is you can go ahead and define like a hex value of, let's say, 1111. And if you're doing it this way, it's going to be very easy. What you can do on your badge, you can go ahead and instead of having these, utility classes, you can go ahead and do something like style, a color is equal to, some color prop that you pass in. So that's one way of doing it. I personally don't like doing it this way. I would like to use some, predefined colors so the admin accidentally doesn't give some wrong colors, but it's up to you how you want to actually go ahead and implement this, okay? So the way I would like to implement it, guys, is I would like to have a prop over here. Actually, two props, one for a text color and one for BG color. And basically, I'm gonna use these as Tailwind CSS classes, okay? So the way I actually want to use it, and we do have a syntax error, let me remove this. So the way I want to use it is similar to how jetstream does it. So if we take a look at some of the components, I think the modal component does this. Basically, for example, for something like max width, jetstream could have just taken the class value directly, but the way they have it is they have some predefined settings such as small, medium, large, X large, and they allow you to only use these values. So that's exactly what I want for the badge. I only wanted to allow some predefined colors, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same thing they have done over here, although I'm not going to use this syntax. I think I'm going to go ahead and use a match case. So let's go ahead and let me show you guys what I mean by that. So we can go ahead and use the PHP tag, and inside here we can say text color is equal to match. So this is a new, I believe, PHP 8. It's like an alternative to switch statements, and it uses like an associative array, which is very nice. And then here inside the match here, we can go ahead and say text color, and inside here we can pass it in the cases. So I'm going to say if text color is gray, go ahead and return. So we have to say text gray 100. All right. So this will return this value, which is then is going to basically override text gray. And then you can also go ahead and define a default. And for default, I'm also going to have it be text gray 100, right? So you can use this to define all the possible color options. Now, this also has one extra benefit. The way that Tailwind CSS works when you're actually running, npm run dev is it checks all your blade file. And if it sees a class, it doesn't even have to be inside this class attribute. It will go ahead and compile it and include it in your CSS, right? So if you don't actually do it here, another alternative solution, for example, you could do is you could say text, text color, right? You could technically do something like this as well, and then 800 or whatever. But the issue with this is the Tailwind CSS optimizer or whatever. I'm not sure what the tool name is. It won't be able to actually detect your class names. So this is a bit more convenient because you don't need to write any Tailwind CSS configs. It will just automatically work out the box. It's also easier if someone reads the file, they know that we support all these color options. So let's go ahead and add a few of them. I'll update this later on, guys. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I'm going to say blue, and I think I want these to be actually 800. You can use any color you guys like. I'm going to say red and then yellow. Later on, I'll come back and I extend this list. And then we need to do the exact same thing for our background options as well. I'll name these BG. And then instead of text, it's going to be BG. And for the background, guys, I want it to be a bit lighter. So I'm going to say 100. Okay. So we have a nice contrast between the color and the background. So now that we have these two guys, we can go ahead and inside here, basically just echo them out. So I'm going to say a text color as well as a BG color. Okay. So now that we have this, guys, we can actually go ahead and test it out on our category box. I can go ahead and give it a prop of text color, and I can set this to red. And then we can say BG color equals to red. So let's go back and let's try it. As you can see, guys, these became red. If I go ahead and I use BG blue, we get a blue background and red text. So this gives us the functionality of customizing these colors. And then on our admin panel, we can go ahead and use blue and red. We can maybe later on add a select and only give us the option we have. Instead of the admin being able to put whatever they like, we can do that later on. Okay, so let's go ahead and replace this with the actual values. I'm going to say category BG color. And then here we can say the exact same thing. Category text color. Now, one thing we can do, guys, and this should be this way, is if you're working with blade components, instead of using this blade syntax, you can add a double colon before the prop name. And this will basically remove the need to have these open and close curly brackets, okay? So the double colon makes it so the code inside these quotation marks is interpreted as PHP code. And now if I do a reload, this one is actually colored, but the other ones are using the default color. So if you look at this one, I reload, the BG should also be blue. Let's save it. And as you can see, this one actually has the proper colors. The other ones are using the default gray color. All right, so now one more thing I would like to do, guys, is later on, we may want to basically maybe use wire navigate. We might want to do some extra functionality on this. So we want to pass in some custom attributes. In order to be able to receive custom attributes on your element, I'm actually going to make this a button. On your element, you actually need to go ahead and pass in an attributes variable, attributes, okay? And I don't know if I have mistyped it. We can basically just go ahead and copy it from here. Yeah, I did type it correctly. So this is basically the list of all the attributes you define on your button, right? On your component. So here, if I, for example, were to add wire click, it's going to be stored inside this attributes variable. So by just echoing it here, it's same as us adding wire click, right? Once it's actually added to the page. So this is going to be quite useful for us. I'll save this up and let's go back, ensure everything works. It is indeed working. So now that we have this, we can go ahead and also add the badge to our post list as well. So I'm going to open up post item. So this is the blade component we are using to display every individual post. So let's scroll down, and I believe our categories should be displayed before this minute red, right? So what we can do is because we're using justify between over here, I'll actually go ahead and add a div and wrap it around our minutes red. And before that, we can go ahead and actually display our category. So I'm going to copy it from our category box, this for each loop. I'll paste it over here. Now, obviously, we don't have this categories variable, so we need to do post categories, okay? And we already have this relationship defined from the previous episode, guys. And then these things, we don't need to actually change it, okay? So let's do a reload. Now, it is working. However, our minutes red is actually on a new line. So one way of fixing it is we can go ahead and add a flex to our div. Let's see how it looks. It is now working, but they are two grouped together. So we can use the exact gap trick we used on the right side. I'm going to say gap 2. And now I believe it is working just fine. Okay. Now I believe it is also giving it some gap y. So I don't like that. Let's do gap x2. And okay. So now that, as you can see, guys, it is indeed working. So the only remaining part is we need to dispatch an event similar to our search box. So we can actually perform the search on our post list, right? So I'm going to do the exact same thing we did on our search box on these badges, okay? So let's start off by actually implementing it on the categories box because it's a bit smaller. So what we need to do is first we need to convert this into a Livewire component. Now you can technically do it another way as well. You can maybe do add it an href tag and then have it send the user. Let me show you guys actually how this would work. We can say route blog. And then we can go ahead and pass it in some, URL parameters of category. So if I go ahead and manually add that right now, guys, I can go ahead and say category equals, let's say PHP, right? So basically what I'm doing is I'm adding this to at the end of our URL, right? So I'm adding this category parameter. So I can do the exact same thing with these badges as well and use wire navigate. And because wire navigate doesn't reload the page, it's still going to give the, basically single page application vibe. So we can use that. This is the easiest solution we can use. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that. So one way we can add parameters to a route, we can actually use this route helper and then, for example, pass in category and then have here be category title. And this should work. Let's try it actually. Let's see. It is telling us blog not defined. Okay, yeah, this route is posts index. Let's do a reload. So if I click on this one, and this actually needs to have Wire Navigate as well, guys. So one thing to keep in mind, Wire Navigate works with buttons as well. So I made our badge be a button. Obviously, it does not support href, but if you use Wire Navigate, it will actually work, which is very nice. So I'll come over here, I'll click on it. Now, as you can see, guys, we're actually reloading the page, and it's also adding the tag. So the search is actually working already. So if you like it, you can go ahead and use this approach. It works very nice, but it does have one flaw. So if I go ahead and I type in something in the search box and then I click on PHP, we lose our search, right? Now, you may like that behavior, you may not like it, it's up to you. So some people may actually prefer it that way. When we click on a link, we lose the search. If you don't want that and you want to actually maintain whatever you have searched for as well, we can actually, I'm not sure actually how to do it with route. I don't think it is possible to do it, or maybe it's a very difficult one. We can use the request helper and do something like full URL with query. Very long method name, I know. But basically it makes it possible for you to get the current URL and just append something to it. In this case, we want a category, right? You can go ahead and use something like this as well. So it's up to you how you want to do it, guys. But I think the previous method works just fine for us, right? So we can go ahead and use this. And I actually like it because if we are searching for something and we click on PHP, I kind of want to reset the search back to its original state. And then once we are on that page, you can actually go ahead and search for a Laravel without any issues, right? So I think I prefer this a little bit more, in my opinion. So now we need to also go ahead and do the exact same thing on these as well. So we can go ahead, let's put this in a new line. I will copy this Wire Navigate and this href. Go back to our post list, and we also need to add it here as well, okay? Very nice. So let's save this. And if I click on Livewire now, we are actually performing these searches. And because we are using Wire Navigate, it feels like we are not reloading the page. Now, if you don't want to use Wire Navigate, you can dispatch an event, right? So that's a second alternative. So if you want that and you don't want to use Wire Navigate for some reason, you can go ahead and basically make this X data and dispatch an event. Exact same thing we did on our search box. But I think this Wire Navigate solution works very well, and we can use it on any page, right? I can even use it here as well. And if I click on it, it will go ahead and redirect me to this page, right? So let's go ahead and also add it to our home page, guys, over here. Okay. So this one is going to be relatively easy. And also these images need to be updated. So I'll just copy this badge code here, or we can maybe get it from our, let's just copy it. So let's go to our home page, which is going to be over here. And then inside this home page, we are including this postcard, right? So I'm going to go ahead, open up postcard. And inside postcard, first thing is we need to go ahead and replace this image to get thumbnail URL. Let's make sure we are using it correctly. So I think I got the method name wrong. Let's double check again. It is get thumbnail image. My apologies. It's not always URL actually. And if you actually take a look for these, it's using a relative path, I believe, something like that. So it is working now. So let's go back to our homepage. The image is showing. Next up, we need to go ahead and actually let's change this to get thumbnail URL. Now that I think about it, the thumbnail image doesn't really make sense. So URL, let's save that. Let's go ahead and update post list. We also need to update post item as well. Yeah, thumbnail URL. I don't like the name of that actually. So let's see where it is. And while we're at it, guys, this link, we will update it on the upcoming episodes when we actually have the post show page. So let's double check, make sure we didn't break anything. It is not. So now we need to go ahead and display the categories. Now on this page, we're only showing the first category on a post. So we're not actually showing all the categories because it will kind of take too much space. So on our postcard, this is where we are displaying the category, and I do need to open up the categories box. So basically we need to come over here, and I closed postcard. Basically here we need to go ahead and check if the post has a category, and we can do something like this. If post dot categories, And then we can go ahead and get the relationship itself and do first. If the category doesn't exist, and we can actually store this in a variable, like let's say a category. If it does exist, then we can go ahead and actually display it. Otherwise, obviously, we're not going to display. So let's go ahead and save this. And then here, instead of this one, I can go ahead and replace it with the one we just copied. And this should actually work out the gate. I don't think I need to change anything. So yeah, I think this should be more than enough. Now you can maybe also make a category badge, so we don't have to define this route every time. So I might do that at the end before we end the episode, guys. But let's go ahead, do a quick reload. And as you can see, guys, we are seeing PHP. If I click on it, it takes us to our blog page and of course shows us all the posts with PHP inside of it. Very neat. So let's fix the spacing issue problem here we have. I'm going to go ahead and use the exact same thing we did, guys. Do gap x2. And as you can see, it fixed this issue as well. And I think we're good to go. Now our image sizes are not exactly the same. So we may have to be careful when we upload the images that they are all exact same size, but I think for now, this should be more than enough. So one more thing I would like to also fix, guys, is let's go back to our homepage. Here, we are doing this div over here. I'm not really having fun with this. I don't think it looks good. So one thing we can do is we can do the exact same thing we did with attributes over here as well. So here I can go ahead and say attributes, rebutes. And then after that, we can actually define this class on the component itself. If you don't like the syntax, you can do it the old way, but I think since I already have covered this, we can go ahead and use it this way. Let's do a reload, and it is indeed also working now as well. Okay. We can also have to do it over here as well. So I'll copy this, add it on the component itself, and now we can go ahead and do a reload, and it is working just fine. Okay, guys, so there are a few more things I would like to cover before we end the episode. I would also like to show what category we are filtering on. Right now, if the user just opens this page, they're kind of confused. What are they filtering for? So I like to show what category we are filtering on over here. So let's go ahead and do it. I'm going to open up our posts list. And over here, the same thing we are doing for our searching. For example, now that I'm searching for Laravel, we show searching Laravel. I'm going to go ahead and also add a similar if statement and say if. Now here we need a way to actually get the currently active tag, active category. So there is an easy way of doing this. Since we are already on our post list, let me open it up. So on our post list, we are already doing this check to get the category, right? So we can use a computer property, which also caches it to get the current category we are searching for and then use it in our blade file as well. So let me show you guys how we can do that. We can go ahead and say public function active category, right? So this is referring to the current category that the user has applied. And then obviously I'm going to make this computed. So this will make it so it's cached throughout the entire request. So we can use it as many times as we like, and it's going to be using the cache, okay? And I'll move this actually inside here. So I'm going to say return this guy, all right? Just like that. And now that we have it here, I can go ahead and say this dot active category. So if active category actually exists, we don't need to actually put the brackets. If the active category exists, obviously go ahead and search by it. If it's null, skip. And this gives us the ability to actually inside our post list now say this active category, right? So if we do have a valid category we are searching for, this will go ahead and obviously execute the if statement. And inside here, I need to say int if. We can use the badge as well. So let me open up our category box. We can go ahead and reuse this badge as well. Put it over here. The only thing we need to change, guys, instead of this category, we need to go ahead and use this.active category. So this.active category title, active category by BG, and the same thing for all of them, okay? Very nice. So let's do a reload. And as you can see, guys, we are getting this over here. Now the UI looks a little bit off, to be honest. So what I would like to do is change it up. Actually, I would like to show the category before the search. So let's save this up. Okay, so, and before it, let's go ahead and say all posts from, and then here I'm going to say containing this. Okay, let's see. Doesn't look that good, guys. I'll fix that on the next episode. Actually, I'll have to find a good UI for this, but basically now we are telling the user or letting them know what they are searching for over here. Now, last but not least, guys, I would like to also add a button to clear the current search results. Last thing for this video, I know the video is getting very long, but basically I would like to add a button to clear the search results. Okay, so what we can do is, or maybe at least clear the category, because for the search we can clear it by doing something like this, but we don't have a way to clear the category, right? So I'm going to add a button over here, and I'm going to say, or we can maybe add a button before it and say if this dot active category or search, go ahead and basically show a button. So here I'm going to say button. I'll just put an X over here. Let's see how it looks. Doesn't look good at all. So let's give it some color. I'm going to say class gray 500 and then text extra small. Looks a little bit better. And I'm also going to say margin right of 3. We'll fix this sliding on the next episode. I don't want to spend too much time on. But basically what I want, guys, is when I click on this button, I want it to go ahead and get rid of our search as well as our category filter, okay, if we have it. So we can go ahead and see a wire click, and we're going to say clear filters, okay? So we need to go ahead and define this method on our post list. So let me open it up, post list. So let me find it. We can maybe have it be under update search. So I'm going to say public function clear filters. And then here we can say this dot search is equal to empty. We can also use reset. And then I'm going to say this dot category also is empty. And we can also reset page. So reset page basically sets our pagination to page 1, right? So you might already have kind of gone all the way to, let's say, page 5. If you clear the search result, obviously it might change what pages we have. So I think it's good to always go ahead and reset to page 1. I'm going to click on this. As you can see, guys, it reset or cleared our search results. Very nice. And then we have 63 pages. So if I'm on page 63 and if I search for something, let's see what happens. We are still on page 63. So if you want this to automatically go to page 1, what you can do is you can go ahead and add this over here as well, if you guys can see, okay? And it should go ahead and reset the page if we search. So let me search again. I'll go to page 63. I click on it. We go back to page 1, okay? I'm going to search for Laravel, so we have some items. Now for our categories, we don't need to do this, guys, because we're actually resetting the page parameter in the URL, right? So if I click on PHP, let me show you guys what I mean. I'll go to page, I don't know, 63, and I click on PHP, and we automatically go to page 1. And the reason is we are basically clearing all the query parameters, right? So that's why we don't need to do it. So that is it, guys, for today's episode. I hope you learned something new. Now, as I said, you can also use basically events, browser events, to also manage categories. That will also work, but it has some issues. The issue is, guys, if, for example, we are on the home page, we want to redirect the user. So I think using links is the better way of doing it, at least right now, because we have Wire Navigate. If you're not using Wire Navigate, you will need to have 2 types of category badges, one for our blog page and then one for the home page. So on the home page, it should be a link, and then on the blog page, it should be a dispatch, right? So if you're using Wire Navigate, we kind of can fix that issue and avoid it and make our code a lot simpler. So that's the reason I'm actually doing it this way. As you can see, guys, it works just fine. We are able to click on it, go over here, switch categories, just like that. And it just works out the gate, okay? Now, we do have one issue, guys. I might have made a mistake somewhere regarding the slug. So for this one, let's see, just before we end the video, what the issue is with it. It's a very long category, EA rerom. So let's search for rerom. Yep, so I'm not using the slug. I might have made a mistake here. Let's just double check. This is correct over here. So here, instead of title, guys, it should actually be slug. Yeah, just something I missed. So let's also fix it on our post list. Let's make this be slug, and same thing over here as well. We are, I believe, using it on postcard. Just something I just caught over here before we end the video. So that is it, guys. Now, if you like, you can also go ahead and have the categories be their own component, but I'll leave that for a different video. The video is already 40 minutes. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, you can ask me in the comment section below. As always, if you're learning and you're enjoying the videos, always like and subscribe and share with your friends. And I'll see you guys on the next episode. Have a great day. Bye.